Namaste, good morning. Thank you for coming and joining me again today for another Krishna book reading. We're going to do a little kirtan right now to hear and chant and get started and be able to receive the information descending from the lips and the pen of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So let's get right to it. Right? Mama Vishnu Padam Krishna Pastavu Srimate Saraswarupananda Paramahamsa Iti Namine Mama Vishnu Padam Krishna Pastavu Srimate Saraswarupananda Paramahamsa Iti Namine Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Okay, Haribo. Welcome. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we are continuing our story. Of course, Lord Brahma is in the position right now of realizing his minuscule position compared to the Supreme Lord Krishna, and is praying to him in full realization of who he is. And that's where we've left off. The best process of understanding you is to submissively give up the speculative process and try to hear about you, either from yourself, as you have given statements in the Bhagavad Gita and many similar Vedic literatures, or from realized devotee who has taken shelter at your lotus feet. So that is the process of realizing true knowledge, not speculative knowledge, which is the most common type of knowledge we try to analyze the material world with. The material science is heavily based on, and philosophy and psychology as well, is based on highly speculative knowledge. This is not the same. Vedic knowledge is absolute truth, and it is realized, as I said here, by submissively, humbly receiving the information, right? As we were talking about our story last time with the teacher and the professor and the saint was pouring the water, and the guy was like, "My cup's too full." And the saint was like, "Yeah, your cup is too full. You will never realize transcendental knowledge as long as you feel like you know better." That is the disease that we have in this material world, of realizing we know better, and we must come to understand that we don't know, because we're actually lost in this material world. We're lost in this cave, like a cave, and we think, oh, I know where I'm going. You're just walking through these caves. It's kind of like, reminds me of the story of well, there's a lot of stories, but there was a Tom Sawyer, where in the end they get stuck in the cave, and their torch burns out, and they're stuck. They're in this. There's just endless caves in there, and you can just get lost. That's the material world, and you need a person who has a torchlight or a candle and says, "Hey." They come from the outside. They've made their way out because their spiritual master has shown them the way. That's why we were talking about just try to realize the truth by approaching the spiritual master. A self-realized soul can impart knowledge into you because he has seen the truth. And this is, you must also, it also says you must humbly and submissively surrender to a spiritual master in that Bhagavad Gita quote. It's not just, okay, I have a spiritual master. You must realize that you don't know, as Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita also did not know. He did not know, so he submissively put the question to his teacher. Actually, the Srimad Bhagavatam is full of this kind of receiving of knowledge, teachers and students, or teachers and disciples. And even the disciples themselves are really great and amazing saints, and have realized knowledge, but they still submissively put themselves to the higher authority to learn about the absolute truth. And so here also, Lord Brahma is realizing that and reiterating that point, that you must approach a spiritual master, a self-realized devotee, not just anyone, not just anybody, any George, they say George, Dick, or Harry, anybody on the street. You must approach a spiritual master. You must listen to them. You must consider that, anything that a person who's calling themselves a spiritual master must be humble, a well-wisher, and also what they're saying must line up with what's being said in the Shastras or the scriptures. You can't just be making up stuff. A lot of people just make up stuff. and they call themselves a spiritual master or an incarnation of God or incarnation of Jesus or whatever they say it is. But you really have to have a discerning mind. So receiving knowledge doesn't mean just blindly accepting anything. It means really considering what's being said. Is it true? Does it match up with the scriptures? Do I feel in my heart that it's true? So the spiritual life is very, very precious. You don't just kind of throw it to anybody. So it's not just like we're like blindly accepting things. We consider these things. We apply them in our life, and then we have the realizations. If it is a pure devotee, you will know within your heart. If you are serious, you will know that that is the absolute truth. Because Krishna will tell you. One has to hear from a devotee without speculation. One does not even need to change his worldly position. He simply has to hear your message. So, Arjuna, for example, wanted to go off and be a yogi, but Krishna was saying, you don't need to go off and be something that you're not. You don't have to do that. He was like, well, this is better, He's like, no, fight for me. Be a warrior, but don't do it with attachment. Do it as an offering to me, but don't have an attachment for the result. That's true renunciation right there. One does not even need to change his worldly position. He simply has to hear your message. Although you are not understandable by the material senses, simply by hearing about you, one can gradually conquer the nescience of misunderstanding. That is the material world in its full. Nescience of understanding. Nescience is like darkness, right? It's like this, it's like opposite of truth, right? And we're just stuck in this complete darkness of misunderstanding, thinking we're all the body, we're all this person or that person, we're having these relationships, and this is what, will bring us happiness in life, blah, 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 so on, so on. Nescience of misunderstanding. By your own grace only, you become revealed to a devotee. You are unconquerable by any other means. Speculative knowledge without any trace of devotional service is simply a useless waste of time, and search it for you. Devotional service is so important that even a little attempt can raise one to the highest perfectional platform. One should not, therefore, neglect this auspicious process of devotional service and take to the speculative method. So people actually, a lot of times, these philosophers and scientists or so on, they just love to hear themselves talk. And it's kind of like mental masturbation. Sorry to use that word, but that's kind of really what it is. There is no desire to really know. They just like to kind of get off on all the things that they can think about. But it's actually complete ignorance, really. It's just like fumbling around in the caves of the material world. You're like, ooh, this cave is kind of cool, and that cave's kind of cool, but you're just lost, you're just lost in bumping around in this darkness. By the speculative method, one may gain partial knowledge of your cosmic manifestation, but it is not possible to understand you, the origin of everything. The attempt of persons who are interested only in speculative knowledge is simply wasted labor, like the labor of a person who attempts to gain something by beating the empty husk of a rice paddy. A little quantity of paddy can be husked by the grinding wheel, and one can gain some grains of rice, but if the skin of the paddy is already beaten by the grinding wheel, there is no further gain in beating the husk. It is simply useless labor. Sort of like, there's another saying, beating a dead horse, right? You're not getting anything really out of it. You just like, ooh, let me get a few of these grains of rice just by using my mind to speculate about all this, philosophy, and it could be this, it could be that, and this and that, and blah, 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 blah. And it's just a simple waste of time when you can just be like, someone comes to you and says, hey, look, here's a feast. You're like, no, I like to eat these few grains of rice off the ground. I'm getting much pleasure from that. And they're like, well, no, look, the feast is right there. I'm starving. I got to eat these rice. It's just like, you can learn the absolute truth, which will bring complete peace and happiness by approaching a spiritual master who will give you the Vedic knowledge, the true Vedic knowledge about loving devotion to the Supreme Lord. My dear Lord, there are many instances in history of the human society where a person, after failing to achieve the transcendental platform, engaged himself in devotional service with his body, mind, and words, and thus attained the highest perfectional state of entering into your abode. The process of understanding you by speculation or mystic meditation are all useless without devotional service. One should therefore engage himself in your devotional service, even in his worldly activities, and one should always keep himself near you by the process of hearing and chanting your transcendental glories. Simply by being attached to hearing and chanting your glories, one can attain the highest perfectional stage and enter into your kingdom. So this is a very important point. Why do we do kirtan meditation? This is the main reason, because the hearing and chanting is the prime benediction. It cleanses the heart. So because of our lust, our desire to control in this material world, we've had all this dust cover our heart like a mirror, like our mirror in our heart is covered, so we can't really see who we are. We have the nescience of misunderstanding, as Bhaktivedanta says. We don't understand, we don't see who we really are. And the chanting and hearing and chanting Krishna's names is not different than Krishna. It is the cleansing agent. It is the means and it is the end. It is the, what they call that, the sadhana, the process, and the sadhya, so the goal. So the goal is Krishna. The process is Krishna. So you hear and you chant and you take in, and it helps clean your hearts, and then you read the Krishna book, or you listen to your spiritual master talk, and then wow, you're like, okay, I get a little of something, I apply that in my life, I just keep doing it, and I'm like, oh, okay, and I have another realization, I'm like, oh wow, okay, this is what I need to do, and I need to not do this. And so you're really understanding more and more that you need to apply the medicine, you need to apply the hearing and chanting. Otherwise, there is nothing. You might just end up speculating and engaging in fruitive activities as well. Okay, so let's see. If a person therefore always keeps in touch with you by hearing and chanting your glories and offers the results of his works for your satisfaction only, he very easily and happily attains entrance into your supreme abode. We've talked about this before. So once again, Krishna is saying, do this to me without attachment. Don't have a desire for the result of the activity. Just do this activity for me, and that will bring you true happiness. You are realizable by persons who have cleansed their hearts of all contamination. This cleansing of the heart is made possible by chanting and hearing the glories of your Lordship. Same thing. The Lord is all-pervading, as is stated by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Everything is sustained by me, but at the same time I am not in everything. Since the Lord is all-pervading, there is nothing existing without his knowledge. The all-pervasive nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can never be within the limited knowledge of a living entity. Therefore, a person who has attained steadiness of the mind by fixing the mind on the lotus feet of the Lord is able to understand the Supreme Lord to some extent. It is the business of the mind to wander over various subject matter for sense gratification. Therefore, only a person who engages the senses always in the service of the Lord can control the mind and be fixed at the lotus feet of the Lord. This concentration of the mind upon the lotus feet of the Lord is called samadhi. Until one reaches the stage of samadhi or trance, he cannot understand the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There may be some philosophers or scientists who can study the cosmic nature from atom to atom. They may be so advanced that they can count the atomic composition of the cosmic atmosphere, or all the planets and stars in the sky, and even the shining molecular parts of the sun, or other stars and luminaries in the sky, but it is not possible to count the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the point, Material science is so limited because it only deals with the material nature. And even, Bhaktivedanta is saying that the scientists may get to a point where they can do all these things, but right now they're not even close to that. they're not even close to even understanding. The more they uncover things in the material world, the more mysteries and more questions are available, because this universe is so complex. It's so far beyond the ability of our senses to even understand. That's just the material world. So, let alone what can a scientist really know of the spiritual world? I think there was a famous picture where they were like, the person was there's the universe, but then they're like peeling back the universe's outer layers to see the spiritual world. And that's really true. In the material world, material energy can only tell you about the material world. It can never really explain to you. It can only point to imply or point to the idea of a spiritual reality, but it can't measure it because it's material, and you can't measure something that's spiritual with material energy. So this is the frustrating thing that oftentimes I try to explain to my atheist friends, that these points about why material science can never understand spiritual nature, and their conclusion is that because they don't see it, it doesn't exist. But there's so many things in the material world that they don't see. They don't really even see other dimensions. They can't even see what's going on in another part of the world. They can't see what's going to happen tomorrow. Their mind is not, and their senses are so limited. So how could they possibly ascend in the ascending process? As described in the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra, the Supreme Person is the origin of all qualities. He is generally called Nirguna. Nirguna means without qualities. Guna means qualities, and nir means without. But impersonalists, now remember this word, impersonalists, people who believe that the monists, they believe that the absolute truth is one energy, one reality. In other words, all the material elements, names, even the concepts of gods or deities are all Brahman. They're false. They're what they call Maya. But this is actually refuted in the Vedas itself, that impersonalists or Mayavadis philosophies are not actually sound philosophies, because they are unable to estimate the qualities of the Lord in transcendental realization. They conclude that the Supreme Lord has no qualities. But that is actually not the position. The real position is that he is the original source of all qualities. All qualities are emanating constantly from him. How therefore can a limited person count the qualities of the Lord? That was that point again. How can a limited person count the qualities of the Lord? Not even Lord Brahma here in this case could even understand Krishna, and he's the supreme creator of the universe. Who are we to really say that we're better than Lord Brahma? So it is not possible to make an estimation of the transcendental qualities of the Lord. He is therefore called Nirguna. His qualities cannot be estimated. One should not uselessly labor in mental speculation to estimate the Lord's qualities. There is no need of adopting the speculative method or exercising the body to attain mystic yoga perfection. Yes, because the speculative process will never come to the absolute understanding. Never. It's never, because of its limitation, the limitation of the mind, the limitation of the senses in the material world to try to measure or try to ascend to the absolute truth. It will never happen. That's why we are in a descending process, and the descending process is realized, and it can also be checked. You can use material knowledge, in the service of Krishna, in just as an aid, but the Vedic truth is the absolute truth. That's the end all. One should not, so there is no need of adopting the speculative method or exercising the body to attain mystic yoga perfection. One should simply understand that the distress and happiness of this body are predestined. There is no need to try to avoid the distress of this bodily existence or attempt to achieve happiness by different types of exercises. The best course is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead with body, mind, and words, and always be engaged in this service. And that's engaged in your service in whatever way. It's not like it's a bummer. This is actually a very joyful process. You can engage your talents in the service of Krishna. instead of in the service of yourself. You know, the happiness, the so-called material happiness and the material distress are like, as my spiritual master would say, you know, you learn it in the playground. It's like a seesaw. Sometimes you're up and you're like, woo, I'm up, but eventually it goes down, you know, and then the other person's up, but you're down, and you're like, oh, I'm down, but then it goes up again. And so the idea is to become equiposed. In other words, you're not happy, you're not attached to the so-called fleeting material happiness, and you're not attached to the fleeting distress, because it'll eventually change. You just stay equiposed. You stay at one point focused on your service to your spiritual master and to Krishna. And just checking on the time here, we've got about 5 more minutes. Let me finish on. This transcendental labor is fruitful, but other attempts to understand the absolute truth are never successful. Therefore, an intelligent man does not try to understand the Supreme Person, absolute truth, by speculative or mystic power. Rather, he engages in devotional service and depends on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He knows that whatever may happen to the body is due to his past fruitive activities. If one lives such a simple life in devotional service, then automatically he can inherit the transcendental abode of the Lord. Actually, every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and a son of the Godhead. Each has the natural right to inherit and share the transcendental pleasures of the Lord. But due to the contact of matter, conditioned living entities have been practically disinherited by our own choice, of course. If one adopts the simple method of engaging himself in devotional service, automatically he becomes eligible to become freed from the material contamination and elevated to the transcendental position of associating with the Supreme Lord. So I always think of like the story of Jesus Christ, that the prodigal son, and it's such a beautiful story because the prodigal son was desiring to enjoy. And so he left home, he left his father, and his father just gave him the means to do that, because that is a free choice. You can go, you can do what you want. You know, don't expect to be happy, but you know, but you can go. And we know what happened to the prodigal son. He had the misfortune, all these things happened, and then he had a realization that was doing better, that even the servants at my father's house were, you know, much better. And so he went back with an attitude to just, you know, submit himself to be just a slave to his father, to work in the, you know, because he would be much happier there. And the father was so overjoyed. So, you know, it's not like Krishna's like, you know, Krishna is very unhappy when we want to turn our back to him. And he's always waiting, just like that bird that we talk about, the 2 birds, always waiting for us to turn around and see him. And it's not very difficult to go back to him. And then it's said in the scriptures, once you go back to Krishna, you never come back to this world. It's like you learn once, you know, it's not enough times. Let's see. Okay, we got a few more. This is a long prayer, but we're going to just finish up this one paragraph. If one adopts the simple method of engaging himself in devotional service, automatically he becomes eligible to become freed from the material contamination and elevated to the transcendental position of associating with the Supreme Lord. All right, we'll go with one more paragraph here. Lord Brahma presented himself to Lord Krishna as the most presumptuous living creature because he wanted to examine the wonder of his personal power. He stole the boys and calves of the Lord in order to see how the Lord would recover them. After his maneuver, Lord Brahma admitted that his attempt was most presumptuous, for he was attempting to test his energy before the person of the original energy. Coming to his senses, Lord Brahma saw that although he was a very powerful living creature in the estimation of all other living creatures within this material world, in comparison to the power and energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his power was nothing. The scientists of the material world have discovered wonders, such as atomic weapons. And when tested in a city or an insignificant place on this planet, such powerful weapons create so-called havoc. But if the atomic weapons are tested on the sun, what is their significance? They are insignificant there. Similarly, Brahma's stealing the calves and boys from Sri Krishna may be a wonderful display of mystic power, but when Sri Krishna exhibited his expansive power in so many calves and boys and maintained them without effort, Brahma could understand that his own power was insignificant. So a very important point in this, even in this material world, that's Lord Brahma. I mean, he's like almost, he is the most powerful living entity in this universe. And oftentimes in our own life, we've come into contact with abilities such as beauty or fame or fortune, intelligence, and we become puffed up. As we will find out later in the story of Lord Indra, you have a little bit of something and you start thinking yourself greater than everyone else, including God. And God just shows you really quickly how insignificant you are, because in the life of a Stephen Hawking, or he was very intelligent, but then his intelligence was laid low when he died. There are people who are beautiful, they become movie stars, and then eventually their beauty fades. And so these kind of things, it's a very important point. And anyway, we'll get more of this story later, and let's chant a little bit right now. Thank you very much. Okay, Hadi Bol, that's all for today. Thank you. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much.